welcome to CEC lectures. Myself Dr. Preeti Jogani. I am from Department of Computer Science, Aryabhat College, University of Delhi. So in this lecture series of ours, Introduction to Programming using C++, presently the topic which we are learning is inheritance, and in our previous lecture we have seen the very basic details of the inheritance, that how it is implemented. So today's agenda for this particular lecture is categorically the modes of inheritance. So let me recall it in a nutshell, that inheritance basically a property of object oriented programming languages through which we will be able to inherit whatever is written, or the basic features which are written inside the parent class, those will be inherited by the child classes, and those can be used by child classes. Now if we say there are two types of members inside the parent class, these are private and public, and these access specifiers, that's private and public, are actually kind of, we can say, very clear right from the starting, whenever we have started coding or whenever we have started programming in C++. Now coming to public members, we have seen in the previous lecture that they can be inherited. Now coming to private members, the question here is, the private members can we actually inherit the private members? So the answer here is no, we cannot inherit private members, because if inheritance of private members would have been kind of, we can say, permissible inside the language, the whole purpose of data encapsulation or data hiding, we can say, will defeat. So the clear cut answer here is private member is not inheritable. So if we modify the visibility mode by making it public, this is going to take away the advantages of data hiding. So now we are actually in a fix that private members not inheritable, and if we are going to declare those private members into the public section, the data hiding is actually, the concept of data hiding will be missing. Now what should we do if we actually want to inherit those members which are actually private to one particular class? So with this we are all set for introducing a third visibility modifier, that is the protected. So till this point we will be having only two visibility modifiers or access specifiers, one is private, another one is public, and now we have introduced one more, which is protected. Now let's try to understand what is this protected visibility modifier. So the member which is declared as protected will be accessible to all the member functions within the class as well as the class immediately derived from it. So for example, I am just repeating the sentence, the member which is declared as protected, or the protected members where all these protected members will be accessible. These protected members will be accessible to all the member functions within the class as well as the class immediately derived from it. So what is kind of the bottom line here in this sentence? That means, so within the parent class or within the original class, the members which are declared as protected will behave as private, just with one kind of, we can say, clause or one flexibility, that they are also accessible into the child class which is being immediately derived from that particular parent class. So let's say we have class 1, we have private members into that which cannot be inherited, public will be definitely inherited, but we want something of a combination, that here in this class 1, that member will behave as the private member, but it is also having an option, or it is also having a permission, it is also having a flexibility of getting we can say accessed by the inherit class or by the child class. So, for example, this is something which is, there is a particular save which is being kind of handled by mother, father, and obviously the child is also having access to that, but no one from the outside world. So, something of that sort we are looking for here. So, protected members will behave as private members within the original class, and the class immediately derived from it is also allowed to access. Now, in which way or under which modifier, that depends the kind of, we can say, how the class is being derived. Now, the access modifier protected, as we have introduced it today as the third access modifier, is especially, we can say, is very relevant to when we talk about C++ inheritance. So, like private members, as I have told you, the protected members are inaccessible outside the class. Outside the class you can't access it. So, that means in this way you are achieving the data hiding also. The implementation of data hiding, or the we can say essence of data hiding, is captured by not allowing private protected members to be accessible from outside the class. However, they can be accessed by derived class and friend functions or friend classes. So, who all are allowed to access the protected members? The class itself, the derived class, and the friend class or friend functions, we can say. And we need protected members if we want to hide the data of a class, but still want that data to be inherited by its derived class. So, something which is available to the parent class, not available to all the classes outside, but yes, still that is available to the only to the derived class or to the friend classes of that particular original class. So, here is a solution which is protected members. Now, with the introduction of this new visibility modifier, what are we achieving? We are actually achieving, we can say, a midway of getting or implementation of inheritance as well as implementation of data hiding. Data hiding is implemented as other outside classes are not allowed to access, and inheritance is implemented as only the derived classes are permitted to access the protected members. Now, coming to the next thing, which is modes of inheritance. So, as we have seen in the previous lectures that we have in the declaration of derived class, we have class car or the derived class name, and then we have a mode of inheritance, and which is followed by the name of the base class. So, what are those modes of inheritance, and what does it what does it mean when we talk about that particular class is inherited in public mode or that particular class is inherited in private mode or something of that sort. So, let us try to understand this modes of inheritance. So, whenever we are deriving a subclass from a base class, from a public base class, we can say, the public members of the base class will become the public in the derived class as well. So, the public members of the base class will serve as the public members of the derived class also if the mode of inheritance is public. And along with this, the protected members of the base class will become protected in the derived class as well. So, public mode is, we can say, actually the mode which is preserving the visibility or which is preserving the access specifier of the parent class into the child class as well. So, whenever we are inheriting the public base class in a public or base class in a public mode, the public members of the parent class will reside into the public section of the base class. The protected members of the base class will reside into the protected section of the derived class as well. Now another mode could be, one mode is public, another mode could be protected mode. But one thing more to add into the public mode, here we have talked about public members, and we have talked about here protected members as well, but we have not talked about private, because private members cannot be inherited. As I have already told you, if I am going to allow the private members to be inherited, this is going to defeat the whole purpose of data hiding. So whenever we talk about inheritance, or whenever we talk about taking feature of from one class to another class, we will be always talking about either the public members or the protected members, not the private members, because private members in any case are not inheritable. Now coming to the next mode, which is the protected mode. Now a base class is being derived into the protected mode. Now let us see what happens to the public members and the protected members of the parent class, and how this will be inherited inside the derived class. So if we derive a subclass from a protected base class, or we can say if we derive a subclass from a particular base class in protected mode, then both the public members and the protected members of the base class will become protected in the derived class. Earlier we have seen, if a subclass is being derived from a public base class, then public member will remain public and protected member will become protected. But here if we are talking about the protected mode, that means in this situation both the public members and the protected members of the base class will become protected members of the derived class. So here we can say public mode is going to retain the visibility of the access, we can say visibility of the members as it is from parent class to derived class, but in case of protected mode, the whole visibility of the public members as well as of the protected members will change to protected. Now obviously, as you would have guessed that apart from these two modes of private and protected, we have third one, which is the apart from this public and protected mode, we have private mode also. And if we derive a subclass from a private base class, or we can say if we derive a subclass from a base class in private mode, then both the public members and the protected members of the base class will become private in the derived class as well. They will behave as private members of the derived class. So we can say whatever the mode is, if the mode of inheritance is public, the access specification will be retained, it is not going to change. If the mode is protected, the private and the protected members will behave as protected members inside the derived class. If the mode is private, then public and protected members of the base class will behave as private members in the derived class, while the public, we can say mode is not going to change the access specification. And if we can see, the private members in the base class cannot be directly accessed in the derived class. What way which we have devised for this is protected members. Protected members can be accessed, but not the private members. Now coming to one more examples in which we have classes A, B, C and D, where A is going to be the base class and B, C and D are the child classes with the variables X, Y, Z. Now let us see how it is going to implement. So we have one class which is class A. It is having one public member X, one protected member Y and one private member Z. Now what are we going to do? We are actually going to inherit this class A into class B, into class C and into class D with 3 different modifiers. Now let us say class B is inheriting A in the public mode. So X, which was public there, will be public here as well. Y, which was protected there, will be protected here as well. So now within this class B, X is a public member, Y is a protected member, and Z, it is not accessible because you can see Z is a private member of class A, so you cannot access. So public member will become public, protected member will become protected whenever the class is being inherited in the public mode. Now let us consider another class in which we are changing the mode. We are changing the mode in the sense we have one more class which is C, and that class C is actually inheriting the parent class which is A in the protected modes. Now here you can see class C protected A. Now X, which was public, is now has become protected inside the class C. Y, which was already protected, will come as protected here, and Z obviously is not going to be accessible from C because it was a private member. So whenever we are accessing the parent class in the protected mode, all the public and all the protected members of the parent class will become protected here. Now coming to the class D, which is trying to access the class A privately, or we can say private is default for all the classes. So whenever we are accessing any parent class privately, all the public and the protected members will be accessed, will be we can say reside here inside the base class in the private section, which is X, which was public there, is now private here. Y, which was protected there, is now private here, and Z is obviously not accessible from D. So what we have seen here. Now earlier we were having only 2 access specifiers, one is public, another one is private. So in order to achieve the we can say the facility of data hiding, we hide our data members by placing them inside the section of private members. So these private members are not at all accessible to the other classes, and public members were obviously be accessible. So here was, we can say, a kind of a watertight compartment, that these are private members, these are public members, these are accessible outside the class, these are not accessible outside the class. So that was the thing. But in this lecture we have introduced one more access specifier, which is protected. And why this protected was we can say introduced, in order to have an combination of the data hiding along with the inheritance. Now let us say we consider a scenario that the derived class or the child class is actually wants to access some of the private members of the parent class. But is it allowed? Actually not. Private members cannot be accessed, but we also need to implement the facility of inheritance, in which we can say that members from the parent class can be inherited. So here the solution is the protected. So whenever we are saying any member as the protected, that member inside its original class is going to behave as the private members as well. It is not accessible to the outside classes except the classes immediately derived from it. Now, why I am saying immediately derived from it? Because in the upcoming lectures, when we will be going through the multi-level inheritance, this word immediately I will be explaining there. So, there can be kind of many levels of inheritance. So, protected member is available to the immediate child class, not to the other levels of the child class. We will explain it in detail as and when that scene comes up. So, the protected member. So, protected members basically is the member which is giving a flavor of private member to its original class, but it is also allowed to be accessed by the derived class or by the child class. Now, the next scenario which we have discussed here is taking the members from the parent class, where these members are going to reside inside the coming up this base class, coming up this child classes or coming up this derived classes, we can say. So, where they are going to find this place, their place inside the derived class, that depends upon the mode of the inheritance. That mode could be private, that mode could be public, or that mode could be protected. So, if there is a private mode, it is going to retain or it is going to preserve the access specifications of the parent class. If the mode is protected, it is going to take the members public and protected from the base class and will give them to the protected section inside the child class, while the private mode, which is the default mode, we can say, is going to take the public and protected members from the parent class and will give them to the private section of the child class. So, here we can have one table which summarizes the 3 access modes and shows the access specifiers of the members of the base class in the subclasses when these base classes are derived in public, protected and private modes. So, here is the table which we can see on the screen. So, we have one side we have base class member access specifier. In the column side we have types of inheritance, or we can say modes of inheritance, whether the mode is public or whether the mode is protected or whether the mode is private. So, if we can say there is one public base class member, when inherited in public mode it will serve as the public member of the base class. When inherited in protected mode it will serve as the protected of the base class. When inherited in public private mode it will serve as the private member. So, if you can see in the first row, this public kind of base class members are actually kind of we can say are maintaining their status. If the mode is protected, so public members will be protected inside the base class, protected members of inside the derived class, then protected members of the base class will be protected inside the derived class as well. Private members will be taken as private. So, here is the protected mode, and if we have private members, so private members are not accessible in any of the you can say columns, because when a public member is accessed inside the private mode it will become private. When a protected members will become inside will be inherited taking private mode, it will reside inside the private section, while the private members, as they are private, they are not accessible to any of the child classes. And here with this table, as you can see, we are we are preserving the positives of both the words, which are data hiding as well as inheritance. So, here in today's lecture what we have seen, we have introduced one more access specifier which is protected, and what this kind of public, protected and private, these three keywords will change when used as the modes of inheritance that we have seen. So, here is a list of references which is being used for preparation of this lecture. Hope you have enjoyed the lecture. Thank you for a patient hearing.